Yeah, I'm a libertarian, true right to the heart, and I do not like to see freedoms eroded at all for whatever grand cause. Why do we have to think about, all the details that they keep mercilessly bringing up? Why do we have to think about the whole genome of this little organism that has not yet been shown by anybody definitively, or even really probably to cause a disease? What is it? What is it about humanity that wants to go to all the details and stuff and listen? These guys like Fauci get up there and start talking. He doesn't know anything really about anything, and I'd say that to his face. Nothing. The man thinks you can take a blood sample and stick it in an electron microscope, and if it's got a virus in there, you'll know it. He doesn't understand electron microscopy, and he doesn't understand medicine, and he should not be in a position like he's in. Most of those guys up there on the top are just total administrative people, and they don't know anything about what's going on at the bottom. Why do we think, just because Bob Gallo gets up, takes his sunglasses off and says, "Gentlemen, you discovered the cause of AIDS." That's all we have. New York Times article, CDC report, that's all we have. That's not enough. Those guys have got an agenda, which is not what we would like them to have, being that we pay for them to take care of our health in some way. They've got a personal kind of agenda. They make up their own rules as they go. They change them when they want to, and they smugly, like Tony Fauci, does not mind going on television in front of the people that pay his salary and lie directly into the camera on the basis of some flimsy little statement made by a guy who's known to be a crook in lots of other ways. He lied about a whole lot of other stuff. Why do we trust him there? If he was a witness in a courtroom, we wouldn't trust his testimony. We've caught him in too many lies. You don't trust him anymore. We don't trust. We don't trust Gallo. We don't trust him. Nobody should trust Gallo. Gallo's been caught too many times making up stuff. Okay, who do we trust? Fauci. Fauci doesn't know enough to. If Fauci wants to get on television with somebody who knows a little bit about this stuff and debate him, he could easily do it because he's been asked. I mean, I've had a lot of people, president of the University of South Carolina asked Fauci if he'd come down there and debate me on the stage in front of the student body because I wanted somebody who was from the other side to come down there and balance because I felt like, well, these guys can listen to me, but I need to have somebody else down here that's going to tell me the other side. But Fauci didn't want to do it. He didn't want to talk about it.
Based upon the HIV equals AIDS hypothesis, they didn't give us the test. Now,
they didn't give it to us, they sold it to us.
Now, who sold it to us? Who gets the money off the
Bob Gallo himself was getting quite a bit off of it. He had to give a lot back to Montagnier when it was finally proven that he stole the virus from Montagnier in the first place. But Montagnier and the Pasteur Institute are getting $1, I think, or so every time that somebody gets an HIV test. I think that money is the only, it's just like in political scandals. Follow the money trail. Figure out who's getting paid for this. There was a time when I first started asking questions, all I wanted was, where are the papers? Just tell me the papers that you read that convinced you that HIV was the cause of AIDS, because I need to reference those papers in I was working on a test for HIV with PCR, and I needed to write a little report to the NIH and say, here's the progress we've made. And the first line of it was, HIV is the probable cause of AIDS. And I thought that was true. This is before I got involved. And I said, what's the reference for that quote? And I looked for it for about 2 or 3 years, and I never could find it. And by the end of 2 years, I'd ask everybody at every meeting that I'd gone to that talked about AIDS, I'd ask, I'd look through every computer database. There is no reference. There is nobody who should get credit for that statement. And that's a pretty weird situation in science, where getting credit for a discovery is the most important thing in your life as a scientist. You want your work to be associated with you, especially if it's got to do with something that's so important in the world that they're spending billions of dollars on it. We ought to know who was it that should get credit for pointing out to us that HIV was the probable cause of AIDS. And probable is not a very powerful word, but there is no such person. There is no paper, there's no group of papers. They can say, well, it's in there somewhere, but it's not in there somewhere.
Gallo couldn't find it for you?
Gallo wouldn't talk to me, but Montagnier couldn't find it for me. Montagnier said, why don't you, first they say, look at the CDC report. Okay, they're talking about the bulletin of mortality and morbidity that comes out every couple of weeks. That's not a scientific publication in the sense of here's the data, here's the arguments, here's the conclusions. That's just a little thing that goes to doctors and say, when you see somebody come into your office with this kind of symptoms, you report it to us because it's possibly this or that kind of thing. It's not a scientific thing. It's not where the guy that wrote that bulletin that month doesn't get the Nobel Prize for having discovered that HIV is the probable cause of AIDS. Right? I mean, it's ridiculous to quote that thing. And then I told him, I read that. I didn't think that was very. I mean, I'm talking about where did science come by the notion? You know, who brought that up? Who showed it to us? Who explained it to you? Where did you come up with the idea? He said, well, there's this SIV stuff. And I said, yeah, but that was last month. We've known this for a long time. Who is responsible for us knowing it? Don't we want to know that person's name? He walked away. But I would say the answer to the question is the antibody test was something they could quickly develop. That's what Gallo did and sell. And so he did. And he said, we're going to make a lot of money off this. Everybody in the world is going to have to take this test to find out who's going to die of the plague. And a lot of people did take it, and he got a lot of money for it. I mean, and there's all kind of people all the way down the line getting paid for doing something that's absolutely insane. Those people, Methodists and Catholics can believe whatever they want to, and they say, I will believe it. I'll stick by my story till I die, right? I'm a Methodist, pure and simple. That's okay for that kind of stuff. Scientists are not supposed to believe anything. Scientists are supposed to have some evidence that leads them tentatively to some conclusion or to some action. They're supposed to be able to show that to other scientists, any interested person, in fact, who's willing to understand what it is that was used as evidence, should be able to say, yeah, I agree with that. That makes sense, using rules of inference that we've used since Aristotle. That's religion. Same thing with AIDS. It's religion. Go up to Los Angeles to some of these meetings, like where there's a whole bunch of guys that have had AIDS type diseases or have seen friends die, and say, I don't really think there's such a thing as AIDS. I think you guys are suffering from the results of a lot of things that you have done yourselves. It's not like God just smiled on us and not on you and dropped a virus on you. It's because you've been not eating well, you have not been sleeping very much, and you have let yourself get run down. You've also gotten into a panic about the whole thing. You've fallen for their stuff, man. Those guys somehow decided, when they started dying, that it wasn't their lifestyle, which was radically different from other people's, that was causing it. It was something else. And then here comes Fauci, here comes Gallo and Montagnier and the NIH saying, that's right, it's something else. It's something you didn't have. You're not responsible for it. You're just the beginning of it. We're all going to get it. And they liked that so much because they said, we can go right ahead and do what we're doing. We just have to do a few little things differently, and then we'll be okay. They cling to that. There's some of them that aren't that stupid, but there's a lot of them that are religiously associated with the notion. They believe in the notion that it is an infectious thing that will eventually sweep across the planet and kill everybody. Why did they think it was just some virus that this guy Montagnier pulled out of a lymph node? He could have pulled anything out of that lymph node. It probably had 100 different things in there that he could have identified. Just pulled out. Now, why did anybody fall for that? They wanted like hell to keep going, doing what they were doing. The entire AIDS establishment is absolutely guilty of some hideous sins, and everybody's been fooled. Everybody on the planet has been fooled by a handful of greedy people without any scruples and no brains. That's hard to believe. See, I was like, no, it can't be. My mother wouldn't go for it. I said, Mother, I've studied this really well, and I'm telling you, there ain't no epidemic, Mom. There isn't an epidemic. There isn't anything out there that is causing people to die that's called HIV. It's just not. No, Kary, I read it everywhere I look. I go, and Mother, the entire medical establishment is wrong, and I'm right. No, you can't possibly be right, Kary. They wouldn't do that. They couldn't possibly be wrong. Every radio station you listen to, every television station, everywhere you turn, there's somebody telling you that there is an epidemic of some organism that is fatal, and that you get it from sex. I have my own cosmology published in Nature, by the way. That was funny as hell. When I was a second-year graduate student, I published a paper called The Cosmological Significance of Time Reversal in Maddox's magazine. And he took it. And I wasn't a cosmologist or even an astrophysicist. I'd read Scientific American a little bit, taken some acid, had some dreams about how things were, wrote myself a paper and got it published. Suddenly I was writing, I was saying the Big Bang Theory is not right and the steady state theory is not either. This is a good idea right here, what about it? Published it. When I sent PCR, no thanks. They rejected it. Nature rejected the PCR paper that I wrote, and so did Science. Both of those austere magazines. But Nature took the cosmological significance of time reversal, which was the sort of lunacy of a sophomore, a second-year graduate student in biochemistry. When that happened, that was my first real shock about science. I said, there's nobody minding the store, There aren't any wise old men up there. How could this happen? How could they let me publish this theory in Nature? It's not like in some backwater journal. Nature. A lot of the professors in the department said, what in the hell is this? One of our graduate students just put his own paper in Nature, and it's not even about biochemistry? The thing that I learned back in 1968 when I first published a paper by myself in Nature in a field that I had no expertise in at all, there are no old wise men up there at the top of science. Which I really did until 68. I would have thought, if you try to publish a dumb paper in a journal like Nature, it won't get published. If you try to publish a good paper in there, like I later tried to publish PCR, the invention of PCR, in the same journal, and they didn't take it. So it's up there. There isn't an up there. There's no place up on the Academy of Science is just a bunch of idiots, just like everybody else. The editors of journals, austere journals even, they're just busy with their little lives and stuff. There are no old wise men up on the top making sure that we don't do something really dumb. I always think of myself as a kid. I roller skate, and I play, and I love the little kids to play with, and I don't ever think of myself as mature at all. And I think that that's a better way of looking at humans than that as they start looking older that they somehow get wiser, because it's not my experience that they do.